Today on the Idiot's Guide, we are talking about, does the way you pronounce words show your level of intelligence? Some words can sound super annoying, while others make you look very unintelligent.
Me fail
We'll
English?
unpack some
That's
of the
impossible.
mysteries of wordsmithing. I'm your host, Adam Richardson, aka the Prophet Hacker, and I'm joined by the man in charge, Mr. Joe Haslam. Welcome to the Idiot's Guide. Welcome back to the Sons of... Okay. So, one of the things that I guess I need to start with is the fact that, you know, everywhere around you, when you are conscious of what other people are saying, like specifically, to the point where, even the words that you use, the stutters that I say, or the, that's something that I typically deal with. Is I'll say, like, or like when I'm
Using the
thinking,
word, you know.
you know those things are common. Those things happen. Same thing as same thing as so. All of those things are like thought words. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're not talking about mental pauses to think about our next word choice. What we're talking about today is when you choose the word, how do you say that word? And that's the problem. Here's the problem. When you say the word and you have a conversation with somebody, and while they're pronouncing different words, and I'm trying to be very specific and very intentional about my pronunciation, mainly for the sake that this whole episode is about pronunciation. So I think the big challenge with it is that we we have our own internal expectations about how we want to hear certain words, and that then defines, what we expect other people to say. And when they don't pronounce that correctly, then all of a sudden we become critical wordsmithers. And I don't think smithers is a word, but I don't care. Yeah, I made that one up. I wordsmithed it.
Close enough.
That one's a word. So the first one I want to tackle, unless you have more input you want to add to this before we get to the first irritant.
No, there's a lot about this that's just regional. There's a lot about this that's just, you go into a situation and you assume someone's going to say something a certain way, and then it's just not. A lot of pronunciation just comes down to a faster way of saying things, I think. So there's an old I think it's Jeff Foxworthy joke, where he says, I think it's one of his, you're a redneck, or what it is. But it's the word, it's a word. Get out of here.
Okay.
And so it's a phrase, but because of the way it's said, it is one word.
Get on out of here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's just, get out of here.
Okay.
So it's the idea of you're shortening it, and it changes the way that the word is pronounced. And so, it's just a faster way. We see that a lot in younger groups, where they call it now a vacay instead of a vacation, obvi instead of obvious, all these different things.
And I think Riz is charisma.
Oh, is that what Riz means?
That's what Riz means.
All right. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the pronunciation, that we're getting into is just you're kind of shortening that.
I would even say, like, you're right. Generationally, there is that difference. That main concern to look at is they've shortened some of the words, almost like text language. But more so, what I'm talking about is when you're having a conversation and you say, specific words. And I like, we're going to dive into some of those specific words,
Yeah.
right away here. So I don't want to just kind of like start on them, but that's, I think generally speaking, you can say like that there's a difference between our younger generation and what they choose to use, shortening some of those words. But at the same time, like, even for me, saying the word shortening is not necessarily correct. It's shortening. And if I was accurate in the way that I spoke, it would be shortening those words.
Yeah.
And that to me is frustrating because I know I can say the word shortening, which is shortening the word.
Well, and I think part of the shortening of the word, so you've got, shortening, you've got Christmas, which is...
Ooh, Christmas. Yeah. Yeah.
So everyone pronounces
Somebody
it
says
Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Man.
That is the way that it's pronounced. Merry Christmas. But it sounds weird. And the T in there, it breaks up the word. It's this weird situation of having that T that comes in that kind of breaks it up. Christmas. It almost sounds like two words, which
It's abnormal.
It's two words that have come together.
Right.
It's like...
In the language, actually, when you go back to the history of that word, it is actually two different words.
Right. And so it's taking out, in the way that people say these things, is like shortening. That's ironically a longer word than shortening.
Yes.
Because it's essentially you're putting in an apostrophe, like saying aren't.
Yeah.
So you're getting rid of that O and you put a little apostrophe in. And so if we were to write shortening or Christmas, see, I pronounce my T's.
It depends. Like sometimes I pronounce my T's, other times I don't. It depends on the word. I can say shortening.
You don't?
I don't.
Okay, there we go. Now we got the T in there.
Oh, okay.
You'll have to see in post if I actually...
I raced to the next word. Sorry.
There you go. But no, so it would be SHOR apostrophe NING. So that would be shortening.
So since we are on that T,
yeah,
the first one is the lazy T. Okay? The reason why this one is so agitating is not so much in the sense of words like shortening or don't. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But it's more like mountain.
Yes.
Okay? And I want to be careful because I don't say mountain. I don't go to the mountains. I go to the mountains. Okay?
I go to the mountains.
Okay? Now, both of those words, mountain, and mountain, are grammatically correct. Do you know why?
Why?
Linguistically, it's called a glottal stop.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? Oh, yeah. I don't believe this part.
No, the glottal stop.
You know.
I mean, it's very much there. If you listen to a lot of British speakers, they've got a lot of glottal stops in there. French is very nasally language.
Yeah.
And so they've got a lot of similar, it's not a glottal stop, but it's very similar types of
Oh man, I hated French
grammar.
class. I took it in 9th grade and I got the best sleep of my every school day, but I failed.
Really?
I could not get the nasal thing. Like whatever that, like, I don't know. Like it was the worst thing in the world.
So my first French teacher was actually from France. And so she very much taught us how to use our noses to talk.
Mine, I don't think he was from France, but he definitely had the attitude of somebody who wanted you to speak very correct French. So he was always above you when it came to the words that you were saying. So anyway, that's a rabbit trail.
But yeah. So I mean the when you do a fake French accent, everything is done through the nose.
Yeah.
And so that's very much like the mountain thing.
Mountain.
Because you say the words and it's coming from the diaphragm, and then all of a sudden you switch to a nasally part for the and then you finish it in.
I don't N. No, that's wrong. Okay.
All right, let's hear it.
Mountain. If you notice, where my tongue is not a eh. Okay, it is at the roof of my mouth, just like mountain. Okay. The difference is that I'm not pronouncing the T with a strike. Okay.
All right.
What I'm doing is a glottal stop for that T. So the reason why I wanted to point this out is that, in our area specifically, we have certain towns, okay?
No, I know.
We have certain areas or certain towns,
areas,
certain towns that man, we're gonna be our worst. It's terrible.
And if you go back and listen or watch any of our other videos, you will see that we probably do not even follow these all the time.
It's absolutely true. Like, okay, so editing's going to be fun because it's going to be errors on every word that's mispronounced.
Yeah.
Okay, mountain versus mountain. There's a city here called Layton.
Yes.
And it's not called, in Utah, typically the slang is Layton. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's completely, you've given up on the T. Like there's not even a glottal stop there. It's just Layton.
It's the apostrophe.
The other one is bountiful. Okay, there's a T there, bountiful. There's not a glottal stop in that. There's just bountiful. I'm guilty of that one. Okay. I will say, oh yeah, it's up in Bountiful. Okay.
Yeah.
Now it's bountiful. I tried to spell it and my computer was arguing with me the whole time I was trying to spell bountiful because it's wrong. So I was like, see, it doesn't even exist.
Nope.
But then today I was listening to something and I noticed another one is, well, it's not quite in the same line of Layton and Bountiful, but it's interesting versus interesting.
Yeah, that's another one.
That one, if I hear interesting, like I can't do that. I say, and honestly, I say it even faster. I say interesting.
Yeah, so you get rid of the E instead of the T.
Right.
See, again, it all comes down to you're kind of shortening to make it flow better. It sounds like you're doing something that is, or it seems like it's to your intro, less intelligent, but it's really not. It's just shortening a word. When we do it all the time, and we have an entire punctuation mark for shortening words. And so it's something that has existed for a long, long time. But for whatever reason, we continue to see this as somehow, oh, you say mountain? I'm guilty of this. I'm what do they call them?
Did you put together a mountain bike yesterday? Or did you put together a bike?
I put together a bike. It was a tricycle.
Oh,
not a mountain bike.
Okay.
But yes, I say mountain bike.
Mountain bike.
Is
it a mountain or mountain?
It's a mountain. AI is an eh.
Okay, so there's this podcast that my wife and I have been listening to recently. It's called Murder with My Husband. It's really kind of interesting because it's a really young couple, and she's super fascinated by it. Like she's super interested in it, but like my wife is too. But the main girl in this, the husband and wife, she's way into it. She goes down these rabbit trails of like murder mysteries from all over the place.
Oh, so she's not way into murdering someone with her husband.
No, it's a podcast. Okay. It's like Murder with My Husband. Her husband's like just generally there for like the sounding board. So there's moments that he's like, I don't understand why you're so interested in this stuff, but okay, I love you all the same, kind of stuff. So it's funny because you see that you hear the dynamic in their episodes of the husband just not caring, but she is just sold on this stuff. Like some of them are unsolved, some of them are like, so it's really kind of cool. But we were, as we're listening to it, we noticed that there's certain slang things, certain ways that she says words, the husband too, both of them. And we're like, they have to be from like at least nearby here, because some of the words are like Layton and Bountiful, you know? And so it's, and so we like, my wife did a little bit of digging and found out that they're from southern Idaho. I think actually now they live in Utah. They moved down to Utah. I was like, well, that's still fitting. They both, have this. But it's
Mountain
just,
West.
Yeah, I mean, it was just entertaining to kind of identify that this couple was like, over just listening to them, we're like, yes, we know exactly where you're from because of words that you're using. You can really see, and that goes for like, you don't want to ever say this, but like if you go, somebody from Philadelphia is not going to be the same thing from New York or New Jersey. New York and New Jersey, like if you ask them from one or the other and you're wrong, it's fighting words. Like,
oh yeah. Or if you're from Baston,
Baston,
you're gonna talk a certain way if you're from Baston.
How do you like them apples? Look, guys,
but are you familiar with the term shibboleth?
What?
A shibboleth.
No.
Oh, come on.
Shibboleth?
A shibboleth. So it's a biblical term. So it is, I can't remember the specific story, but in the Bible, there is someone that comes in claiming to be from somewhere. And so a ruler asks them or someone else to verify that they are actually from this place, say the word shibboleth. And they pronounce it sibboleth instead. And that proves that they are not from that area because they said it wrong. Versus what everyone else in that area would say it as. And so it's become
So you say mountain, you're like, you're not from Utah.
Right, exactly. So the idea is it's a linguistic term now. It's a shibboleth. So if you're from Nevada, you're going to say Nevada.
I guess if I see the word, well, like in Utah, the same thing. We have hurricane and Washington, and both of those, if you go down to the area, it isn't hurricane, it's hurricane.
It's hurricane.
It's Washington.
Exactly. And so those are shibboleths to show that that's where you're from. People who are not from Nevada will say it Nevada.
I went to Nevada.
Right.
When I was in Las Vegas, Nevada.
And so that's one way that you can tell if someone is from a region or not, is a shibboleth. And so a lot of these things that you're talking about, mountain, Layton, I have a hard time even saying it that way.
Yeah.
Bountiful. That's how you know that someone's from a certain area. It's a shibboleth. And there are a lot of them. Go online, look up shibboleths. And it's really cool to look at what words are specific.
So our channel isn't just about content. It's about connections. By subscribing, you're joining a community of like-minded individuals who share your interests and passions. Let's grow together and forge meaningful connections along the way. So the next one I want to talk about is the lazy A.
All right.
So this one is a little, it's more of an annoying thing because when you see it, it's just, I guess, frustrating. Okay? So the lazy A is words like sail or whale or tail. And I identify this here a lot and often, but it's not just here. This is something that goes on everywhere. But imagine, like, this goes so far as to the fact that it is written out for things. When something is for sale, I saw that eye roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just want to...
It's not for sell, it's for sale.
Yeah, but is that for sale?
Do people actually say that?
Yes.
Wow.
Absolutely. And, like, look at the tell on that well. It's cringeworthy. It's so
I don't have a response. I mean, I can see that. I was just, I was joking about the Baston. I can see that in some of these areas where, there's a very strong regional accent to say that. But I mean, that's wild that someone would say that just in general.
Not just say it, spell it. When somebody says for sale, like this car is for sale, they have a for sale sign.
No, they have a for sale sign.
They have it written for sale.
See, I see those and I just assume that English is not their first language.
No, I doubt it.
Wow. Or I see that in an email, I think I'm getting scammed.
So the other one that I noticed in this one, it's not necessarily that hard A, but it's bag versus beg. So my wife is guilty of this one, but it's also common. I found out it's more common than I thought. Okay? And it is, oh yeah, will you go get the grocery bags? Can you give me a bag from underneath there? I'm like, it's bag. It's like you have to open your mouth more. It literally is just where your jaw is located. That's the difference between what's happening. That's why it's a lazy A. You're not using it correctly.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about where you're pronouncing that word, so bag is a lot more forceful on the muscles through here. So I like to dabble in voices and accents and things like that. So I've learned how to control a lot of the muscles to be able to manipulate my voice, to be able to do different accents, different regional dialects, different, like character voices type things. And so bag is a lot more forceful than beg.
Right.
And so beg is easy versus bag. There's a lot more musculature that's needed for bag than beg.
I would honestly say that easy is not necessarily the word, it's lazy.
Well, I mean, no, I wouldn't necessarily say lazy. Because again, I think this is a regional thing. This is a developmental process in language. But yeah, I hadn't ever really thought of it before. But yeah, the beg just doesn't take a lot of effort. It's less musculature required. So I mean, I guess in that way you could say it's lazy, but it's just easier.
So I'm going to throw this one in there because I say this, and this is often, like, even I think you and I have had this conversation in the past, but it's, for bag, like a bag of groceries. Mm-hmm. So I use the word groceries. I say it fast, groceries. It's like interest, and not interest or interest, but groceries. And most often, if you think about the way that you say that, you're going to say it close, but most people, if they're not thinking about it, say groceries.
Yep.
That drives me freaking nuts. And I had a boss, I worked in a bank in the store, and he had so much fun, in enjoying the fact of when I do like a announcement over the intercom, maybe like, when you're done doing your grocery shopping. He's a groceries. When you're done getting your groceries all together in your grocery cart, and I'm like, oh, you suck. Because I'm not wrong. There is no SH in that word. There is no mesh of the SH or to now become that, and it's groceries. Like, I don't know.
See, I go back and forth when I say groceries, whether I do the sh or s. Sometimes I even mix it. But I also have a speech pattern where I actually use the SH a lot for S words. So I'll say something if it's an S near the end of a word, or so my S is at the beginning of a word. Generally, I pronounce as an S. But at the end of a word, I do a sh instead of a, or kind of a sh instead of a s. So if I say, I'm trying to think of a word where that would come up, but I just do. So if I say a name like Kirsten, it's an SH, and I do it for every time I pronounce these words. I can't remember the actor's name, but he's the janitor on Scrubs. He's got a similar speech pattern where there's a lot of. It's not a straight it's more of a I don't even know how to.
Is it like Sean Connery, where everything sounds the same?
It's
and you
almost
say
like
words
that.
like that?
Yeah, it's almost like that because it's not a hard sh. It's a softer sh sound. But yeah, it's very similar to that where you're pronouncing it in that Sean Connery
It's
way.
dentures. That's what does that.
So something like dentures, I would say, that sh at the end. It's the way I've always pronounced things.
Honestly, it's fitting if you say dentures. Because, yeah, no, it's almost normal when you find somebody with false teeth that they pronounce their S's like that with a sh instead of a s. I don't know why. Like, I think it just has to do with the fact that they're false teeth. Something about tongue placement, and I could go on, but
because the tongue, like when you do an S, there's the tongue is kind of creates a loop in there to push the air through against the teeth. When I say those, it's like it's coming out the side instead of the center.
Yeah.
And that's what creates that SH sound. But I don't have dentures. I don't know where it came from.
So one of the things for the A sound, the sail versus sell, whale versus well, okay, is this is Accents Way English with Hadar. And she has a whole channel. It's actually, English is her second language, but you wouldn't be able to tell by when like watching some of the stuff that she does. It's really, she speaks very clearly, very accurately. But one of the tricks to this was like in the word date instead of det. You're like, okay. Is add the Y sound in your voice. Like intentionally think of the Y, making that Y. So in the word date, okay, or say, like the okay.
The
You're looking to pronounce to get to that sound. Sail. You're natural. Like if that's really exaggerating it, but that's what you're doing in realistically when you say the word sail is you're saying sail.
See, I pronounce it more as like a say L.
Right.
As opposed to sail.
It's a trick to kind of develop that better so that you aren't writing out the fact that you mispronounced the word. So it's not for sell.
Yeah, it's not for sell. But again, I mean, the idea is these are regional dialects. I mean, is it wrong if it's a regional pronunciation? It may not be the accepted pronunciation, but is it wrong?
I mean, for sale versus for sell is wrong. Absolutely.
Okay.
Bag versus
You heard
beg,
it here first.
Bag versus beg is wrong.
Yeah, I think if you're in Boston,
things.
you're going to have a problem with people saying bag. I think we just lost all of our Boston.
Yeah, the quantity. I was like, our one listener is from Boston. So, real quick, just a diversion here. You noticed Mr. Potato Head up here, right?
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Potato Head has no purpose other than, especially with, the Idiot's Guide and what we do here. But it actually serves a purpose, okay? And that is because of Hot Potato Finance.
Yes.
Okay. Hot Potato Finance is our YouTube channel. And linked to that is we're building a membership. We're building a club, per se. What is that called? It's called Patreon. Pronounce the T. It's not Patreon. Patreon.
Not Patreon.
It's not Patreon. It's Patreon. Right?
Right. It's not Patreon. It's not Patron.
Patreon.
Patreon.
I always wonder, like, when I see that word, Patreon, it's so not used in any other scenario. Like, is there a moment in your life where Patreon was a word in a sentence describing something?
No.
That's what I'm curious about. Where did it come from?
Well, I think it comes from patron. So you're a
Right.
patron of something, and so they just changed it to Patreon.
So they just tried to make it sound fancier?
Yeah, probably. It'd be interesting to look into.
The
Why'd they
history
call
of
it
Patreon. Anyway, we have a Patreon. It is patreon.com/TIG. Is it underscore?
Underscore.
HPF for Hot Potato Finance. Guys, there you have lots of different options. You could basically become any level of tater you imagine is available there. And just become a supporter. Become a supporter of what we do here, how we are, trucking along. And by doing those sorts of things, it helps us get to more people, get this out, get the messages out, and get the information out to more individuals like yourself that find this stuff interesting.
And not only that, but it also helps us with certain tiers. You can give us feedback. You can give us ideas of what you want to be listening to on our channel.
Yeah.
So Hot Potato Finance is all about, financial videos. Will be coming out with a lot more here soon that'll be posted onto the channel about relevant topics and what we think are relevant topics. But we're in the financial industry. And so hearing from you guys through Patreon allows us to know what really is important to the people watching our channel and to the general public at large.
So this last point, I'm going to move pretty quickly.
Okay.
This last one's just wrong. Okay? They're just wrong. One of those points is the word probably. Now, if you are one of those people, I hope you're not, because I don't like you already. Probably is not a word, ever. And when you are on a sales call with a customer and you use that word, probably, repeatedly, I want to punch you in the face. That's the only thing I feel like doing, because you don't know English at all. If you feel like that's an appropriate professional word to use. And I'm sorry.
Hot takes on the Idiot's Guide today.
I'm really getting angry about this one because maybe, okay, so I have an experience with this word, and I worked on a sales floor years ago, and this person was like the standard of, what we do as far as sales. He's like, watch me. Do what I do. And there's no way in hell I'm using probably. I'm sorry, but when he turns around and says, well, like, you got to do this. This is the way we do it. And then turns around and starts saying that word, I can't stand it at all. So, anyway.
So do not say that word around him.
Yes, you will get throat punched. That way you can't speak another word. Here's another one.
All right.
Wouldn't. Now that's just, you've given up on words.
So you only lost the D in there. Maybe the L.
I mean, couldn't? You think that's a word?
Yeah, it's couldn't.
I mean, you can identify what word they were trying to say, but they didn't. They didn't.
They didn't. Is that another one? Didn't?
Didn't? Oh my gosh, yes.
Don't get the Hulk angry. You won't like him when he's angry.
Okay.
So now I know the hot button words to say around him to really get him to go off.
He's just gonna, like, we'll start having a conversation, and just to set me off, you're just gonna start speaking these words. You're like, probably today, I wouldn't go to the store where you might find in the mountains that there's no,
And I didn't get anything.
That's really interesting.
It's all very, when you start going through it, this is one of the big things. It's all very nasally.
It is.
didn't, wouldn't. It transfers it from speaking through the throat and the diaphragm to through the nose.
It's a lazy tongue because literally you're stopping all of the stops before it gets to where those stops exist. A D is on the front of your tongue. A T is on the front of your tongue.
Yep.
So if you stop back on your throat, one in, it's back.
Yeah, it's all going through the nasally. It's very French. And guess where the American and British languages came from? It's French.
Latin. No. Yes.
Well,
And German.
French came from Latin, but the English language, and most people don't know this, is very, very French.
All right.
And so you think about the word entrepreneur.
You say croissant.
Croissant. It's entrepreneur is a French word. I saw a joke recently where we I can't remember what it is at this brain fart right now. But talking about how we don't have or the French need to be more English and have more entrepreneurs. Something to that effect, not recognizing that entrepreneur is a French word. We could probably cut that out of that because that was a really bad example.
Good one.
So from an early age, I have taught my kids to be well-spoken. For example, and I think this stems from my own upbringing. Like when I was a kid, I would be corrected in proper grammar and proper pronunciation.
Oh yeah.
You know, like I get the word groceries from my mother. I get the word. I do say aluminum. My mom says aluminium.
Oh
Okay?
wow.
So the other one is garage. Most people say garage. I
Yeah.
say garage. Another one is envelope.
Envelope.
Envelope. Okay. Why is it an on? It's an E. It's envelope. Or is it envelope? I don't know.
Envelope because it's French.
You and that French. Go get some fries.
Those
Anyway.
are from Belgium.
You know, so for example, like even my daughter, she's 8 years old. And, you know, if she's playing with dolls, she might be playing with this baby voice. And then later when she's done playing with dolls, like all of a sudden I'll have this conversation with her and she'll still speak in that baby voice. And I correct that. Now I don't like reprimand. I'm like, hey, I'm curious, how old are you? You know? She's like, oh, I'm 8. I was like, okay, I'd love to hear you sound like you're 8, you know? And I know that's probably a pretty mean thing to do to my kids, but I'm not abusing them. I'm just making sure they are well spoken. And guess what? All of them are well spoken. So
There you go.
you know, I think honestly the biggest thing, we talked about region, we talked about France being the primary influence of all of our stupidity when it comes to our pronunciation.
Oh, French makes no sense.
Okay.
There's an even entire YouTube channel on how French makes no sense.
What's funny is like when you think about the language like Creole in Louisiana, it's rooted in French.
Yep.
And so when you have like regions like that where you're speaking Creole, it's still English. It's just not. It's
Right.
Very mashed potatoes.
Yeah,
when it comes to
it's
it.
very Frenchified English.
Yes.
But I mean, and so that's why when I look at a lot of this, it's, you know, it is annoying. It is, and it shouldn't be, but it is. But that's just because we have our own biases.
Yeah.
We have our own viewpoints on this is the way that it should be pronounced. I mean, there's a whole joke in the TV show How I Met Your Mother about encyclopedia. That's the AE pronounced the A sound, so it's encyclopedia. Or the Renaissance Fair.
1-800-COLLECT, when you leave a message on there instead of actually just doing a collect call, like we had a baby, it's a boy. You know? You have a collect call from we had a baby, it's a boy. You know, and that's it. Like
But the idea is, we get annoyed because there are certain ways that we pronounce words and we expect other people to have that same pronunciation and they don't. And we find it annoying because we feel like we are right. We have looked it up. We know that encyclopedia is pronounced encyclopedia. And so we are very, superior when it comes to that. When in reality, it's just regional dialects. And I think, one thing, and maybe speak a little bit more clearly. It's really hard to. There's a whole joke in. I am really on the TV references today. I must be watching way too much TV. Clarkson's Farm. They've got a Welsh guy on there, and you can't. They make fun of it the entire show that you can't understand a thing that he's saying. But if you're clear and able to pronounce things well, then it's a lot easier to understand and be able to communicate. But the reality is, everyone comes from different regions. Everyone comes from a different background, and that produces regional dialects.
I think generally speaking, being aware of your understandability and how clearly you speak are important ingredients to just general ways of communicating. I think, like when we talk about, I go to a speech therapist and I talk about the fact that I'm on a podcast and, like, I know it's weird. I have this, but I actually at the speech therapist do different levels of communications. So some of it's just having a conversation and like, generally speaking like this, low tones, softer. It's like I'm sitting on a patio having a conversation with my friend. But then I have the radio show host where I'm like, I'm having a conversation. And when I'm talking to you, there's different influxes in how I'm saying things. And my tones are a lot more precise when I say things. Also, the pronunciation matters when that happens.
When you're on a radio show, you need to make sure that you're talking in the right way so that you're getting the information across the best way possible. And that means changing the inflection to different parts of the words, making sure you're watching your pauses so that you're making sure to emphasize certain areas.
So even though I consider myself, perfect when it comes to my pronunciation, I still practice that. That's the point I guess I want to make is not my perfection. I'll move the spotlight off of me for a moment. But
for a moment, that's for sure.
The practice pronunciation. It's not bad. Like it's good. It's helpful. But honestly, if you have no reason to do it and you can dwell in your dialect and that doesn't matter regionally and everything around you, you're just submersed in that sort of situation, then yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah, in Utah, so having lived in Utah for as long as I have, I've adopted the regional dialect. It's a little bit more of a drawl. So originally, I'm from California. And in California, there's a very specific way of speaking. And so even though it doesn't sound like there's a difference in the dialect when you're talking to someone from California, it does make a difference. But when I'm in Utah, I kind of adopt the Utah dialect. It's a little bit more drawly. It's not a full Southern drawl, but it's easier to communicate that way, to assimilate, because then people understand what I'm saying. If I pronounce my words too much, people here don't understand what I'm saying.
You sound like a jerk.
They think I'm pretentious.
Yes, exactly. You're like, ugh. This guy.
And so, and it really is. I mean, we think about it, when we hear, say, a really strong Southern accent, a really strong Southern drawl, not like a Texas drawl, like a Georgia, Missouri drawl, something from the deep South. See, there you go. Something.
I don't know what that word is.
Something from the deep South. We have a hard time understanding it.
I don't even know.
But someone from the deep South understands it perfectly. And if I were to walk in there with a very California accent and very enunciated, very clear. Now, the West Coast accent isn't really an accent. It's a lack of any specific regional dialect. There's no real drawl there. It's very bland. And that's kind of what defines the West Coast.
I can honestly say maybe like Valley Girl.
Yeah, Valley Girl is not a real accent. It's not a real thing. It's a movie trope to be a valley girl where you're like saying this and like,
Oh
like
my
this
gosh,
and
yeah.
oh my God, I can't believe
Yeah.
like you'd say that. That's just so wild. It is it is a total movie trope.
Isn't that Jimmy Fallon that does that? He goes, ew.
But if you were to and so when I say a California accent, Valley Girl accent is not real. Stop with the whole idea. It's like not really a thing. People don't like talk like that.
Look at her butt.
There may be like a few individuals that like say things like that, but it's not really a thing.
It's like so big.
But if I were to come down there and talk in even a New Yorker or a Boston or a Midwesterner accent going to the Deep South, they're not going to understand me.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important. That's why I like having fun playing with these different accents and knowing how to say things, because it means that when you're communicating to someone with a different accent in a different region, it's much easier. And so you can be able to communicate them the same way that they will understand. And so it has absolutely nothing to do with, to your first point, is this what make you look unintelligent? No, it's a regional dialect. And the idea that we have applied this, oh, you're unintelligent because you don't talk the way I do, is a very, very bad idea. It's
Like
just
a
regional
superiority
dialect.
complex.
It's very much a superiority complex. It's the idea of, I'm from the East Coast. I know how to talk. I'm the best. And if you're going to be intelligent like me, you better be speaking like me. And it really doesn't work that way.
What's funny is like, I like when I hear somebody like reading old texts, like old text, like books and things like that. But when they speak like there's a Bible version that I listen to that reads the Bible, and it's this voice that does lots of narrating, and it's just proper English. It's not even an accent, but because it sounds so proper, it's incredible. Like to me, it's soothing, but it's like, I'm going to read the last part of this because like we got to close.
Yeah.
But,
sorry guys. This is a long one, but
like and subscribe and leave a comment or two. We'd like to hear from our listener if this stuff is of value and helpful to you, and that helps us get in front of other viewers. Ugh. Okay, so in most places, like I listen to it because they always pronounce the Bible names, and I can't pronounce the Bible names, so I'm like, I'll let them do it, and that way I know how to say it when.
Well, you know how they say it and assume that they're right,
and so I have to say it all stuffy, and like. Hey guys, we've reached the end of our show today, and thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and life's too short, so keep laughing, keep learning, and remember, idiots have way more fun.
check your shoes.